The 1976 to 1977 Cutlass was arguably the most successful Oldsmobile ever produced, at least in terms of single model year sales. In 1976, the Cutlass that you see pictured here sold over 500,000 units, and in 1977 it went on to sell almost 630,000 units of one vehicle. That's something that just isn't heard of today. Imagine that is pretty much 2.5 assembly plants running full-time, round-the-clock, or 3 plants kind of running normal shifts just to produce one model year vehicle. And I must say that I think one of the reasons for the Cutlass's success was that very distinctive front end that you see with the waterfall grille. Now, that waterfall grille was something that really hadn't been seen on Oldsmobiles much before. In the 1974 model year, the Delta 88 as well as the 98 had a grille that kind of curled up into the header panel a little bit, but nothing to this extreme. And it certainly gave the car a look that no other General Motors vehicle, at least, had. Overall, quite distinctive, quite handsome, and just a great car. And in terms of personal preference, while I like that waterfall grille front end, I actually like this grille that's seen on this particular 442 even better. The kind of kinked or sloped back grille, I think, is even more radical and good looking than the previous one that I showed. In any case, the 76 to 77 Cutlass were highly successful, and what we are going to do today is sit down with none other than the chief designer for these vehicles, Len Casillo. Len hired into General Motors in 1961 and really started his career in Chevrolet studio. Then he went over to Cadillac for a brief bit, then to the Advanced Studios, and then to Oldsmobile, where he would spend almost 2 decades. So we're going to talk with Len a little bit about his time at GM, as well as the 76 to 7 Cutlass, and a few other vehicles along the way. Here we go, and here's Len. Well, welcome back to Rare Classic Cars. I have another treat for you in the home of Len Casillo. So, Len, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Oldsmobile, is that?
That's fine. I'll take
fair?
that. Yeah. Most people won't know what that means, but I'll take it.
Oh, I think you're being, too modest here. So for those who don't know, Len started his career at General Motors in 1961 is when you hired in. And then you spent a little bit of time in the Chevrolet studio.
Right.
Working on the 66 full-size Chevrolets.
66 Chevrolet Impala.
With those parallel kind of creases in the front fender, 1 year only. So for those who look at the 66 Chevrolet front end, that's Len on the fender.
That was my first real having something that you could point at and say, I did that a couple years ago. Yeah.
Wow. Then from there you went to Cadillac briefly, right?
Went to Cadillac briefly.
Worked on the big monster 69 and 70 facelift of the 65, 6, 7, and 8.
Yep.
And then you went into the Advanced Studios for a little bit.
Right. Including
working on, well, it was not the boat tail Riviera on the B body.
No,
it was
the one on the A body.
The A body.
Yeah.
So I'll put a picture so the folks understand. Len worked on the one that was, let's call it the highly attractive boat
Let's
tail.
call it that, yes. And it was. I think, wish we could have built that car on the A body, because I think it would have been an entirely different reception for that vehicle had we done that. But I don't think that was ever really the plan. I don't think we had the money to do it. That's why it ended up on the B body.
That's right, because they were their own E-body platform.
Yes, they were.
And then I think, like you said, it came down to sharing more of the components with the full-size B-body. You had those wide A-pillars that touched down way out at the edges.
You had to reach around that with lines that didn't want to reach around. They wanted to go back smoothly, and they couldn't.
So for those who are wondering about the story of the boat tail Riviera, maybe someday we'll talk more about that. But it started as an A-body, a smaller car, and then it became a bigger car. And as Len said, I think that was a challenge for the designers.
Oh, it was. When they took that to the production studio and had to do it on the B car, you just knew it wasn't going to fit visually.
And that was your friend Jerry Hirschberg,
I was working for Jerry in the Advanced Studio when we did the one on the A body.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that car went to the production studio, and I think it was Don Lasky that was working on that car at the time, but he was never able to capture that car on the B architecture. It just wouldn't work.
And then after that, you started becoming Mr. Oldsmobile a little bit, either assistant or the chief designer.
I was a designer in Oldsmobile for a long period of time, working under Weiland. Then assistant chief designer working under Stan Parker, and then ultimately became the chief myself. And I spent a long time. Somebody told me it was close to 18 years just in those 3 different capacities.
So almost 2 decades with Oldsmobile.
Wow, it make me feel older.
That's great accomplishments. And one of the things that we thought would be great to highlight on the program today was Len and his team really worked on a home run Oldsmobile, the Oldsmobile that propelled the division
Absolutely.
to the million-plus mark in sales, sold 630,000 plus units in 1977, and that's your baby there.
76.
The 76 and 77 Cutlass, which there's a lot of story. Oh, look at that.
That's a memento.
The Ransomy Olds crest or something there.
That's a million car year.
Oh, this is, 1,007,559 Oldsmobiles. Wow. That's amazing.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Well, you got a little memento about it.
Oh, yeah, well, there's actually 2. There's actually 2.
Wow, there we go.
That's got the Cutlass on the front.
Yeah, 78, 1,006,344. Now that has the downsized Cutlass, this one. But still, I mean, in any case, this was the car that really helped Oldsmobile take off
Absolutely,
in sales.
no question about it.
Now, you worked on, this was how the car ended up by 1976 and 7, but it's interesting to kind of look at some of the evolutions, and we're privileged to have Len's actually sketched a fair amount of work here, but this was the previous generation Cutlass that we have. And I thought what was interesting is you have on the quarter, you have kind of a 67 Eldorado
You do, yep.
crease there. Was that a notable cue that...
I don't recall it being at the time. I don't recall that being at the time. I think we probably knew it was on the Eldorado. But yeah, we didn't go in there and copy it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, it was a subliminal...
It was subliminal, yeah, there you go.
Now, a little interesting history Len was telling me about. In 1970, on that previous generation Cutlass, the Cutlass Supreme got its own roof line, and that formal roof line.
Yep.
And John Beltz, who was the general manager, was kind of envious of the Grand Prix, right? The 69 Grand Prix and the 70 Monte Carlo.
He wanted that luxury intermediate car, and we couldn't get that architecture. That had that G-body had a couple inches of dashed axle that we didn't have, so we had to work off the A-body. And the upper was, I think, what really turned the trick for us on that formal upper with the colonnade window.
Yes.
I think that was what made that car, well, it was one of the elements that made that car able to compete with a G on the A architecture.
And it was probably saved some money, too.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Because you were able to get that. So this is one of those great times where the finance people love it, because you didn't need the money.
You didn't need it, right?
You got what you wanted, and you saved some money. So
good point, yeah.
Now, from that car, it evolved into the next generation where the skeg lines were all the rage here.
Yep.
Now, what's going on with the skeg lines? What was the thought there with those the skegs?
We always had a strong wheel-oriented theme with Oldsmobile. Whether it was the skegs or the downturns on the 88 and the 98, they weren't just wheel openings. They always had a little bit of a story involved, and that was it. And then when we did get rid of those, we didn't feel we could have the skegs and the fender shape on top. It was just simply too much to put on one car. But I always liked that look, and it was very distinctive.
It was even more distinctive on the four-door. It's pretty
pronounced. Yeah, a little bit more space to work with, right.
Yeah, and I have a 73 four-door.
You said that, yeah.
You can see the skegs, they're pretty pronounced. But to your point, it wasn't just a Cutlass theme, it was a full-size theme, and the 88, 98 had them kind of, the skegs starting at either end of the car, tilting down.
And they dove down at each wheel opening, yeah.
I thought that was a cool theme. Now, to your point, the skegs evolved into this.
Yes.
You took the skegs off this now.
We took the skegs off. I think it was too much. I don't think you could have that and the fender shape on top.
So you have the fender shape that Is that an Eldorado Q, or is that a...
Well, I think the one on the prior car was probably more of a Q because the Eldorado always had a little bit of angle to it when it turned down.
Okay.
And the Cutlass was more of a, well, it was a vertical that turned down. So there was a little different interpretation between the two.
So we go from that, and then we get to your baby,
Yeah.
the 76 and
76.
7. Now, this has a distinctive front end on it.
Yes, it does.
Tell me a little bit about where did this front end come from?
We had the form, it was already there, and we were looking for a different kind of a grill. And we just started putting mock-ups on the front of that car that went up and over. Olds did have a grill on an 88 a couple of years earlier, where it started to make a curve at the top. And then
The 74 with that little curl inward.
We were thinking about that, and we thought, well, what if we did it and really exaggerated? So we started taking them up and going further back on the hood than we'd ever done before. And at that time, Irv had come into the studio, and we were making mock-ups, and he really was interested in that. He says, you guys ought to play around with that a little bit more. That really could give you guys a very unique look. And that's how it started. I remember John Perkins and I were working on that hood. We must have had a pile of cardboard on the side of that car because we were trying everything we could, but we knew we were onto something. And it ended up being on the car.
Wow.
And then we liked it so much, we even did it on taillights. So the up and over on the taillights, which was kind of a
this one,
replica of the grill, which I thought was unique too.
Now tell me a little bit about Oldsmobiles and these road graphics, because Oldsmobile, like the tail lamps, always were kind of these block forms.
Yes.
You and I were dialoguing. The only Oldsmobiles that we could discern that were different from that were the 86 Tornado, the 66 Starfire.
And the Starfire.
There's always kind of these block, forms.
I think road graphics was very important to us. We didn't invent the terminology, and other divisions also had strong road graphics, but we made that a very integral part of our design effort. Wanted to be able to look at an Oldsmobile well down the road and tell that was an Oldsmobile. So we had strong graphics for the grills, strong graphics for the taillights, not a lot to compete with it. We relied on the recognition of those openings in the front and the taillights in the rear. And there was a lot of push to try and get wall-to-wall taillights on the back. I think a lot of general managers thought that represented a more expensive look, more luxurious, but it gave us what we wanted, which was the recognition. And you could spot an Oldsmobile from down the road pretty good, front and rear. And side view, really. You don't get to see the side view of cars as much as you do fronts and rears, but things like Skegs.
That's interesting that you say that, because you're right. A lot of cars don't have the side view that's distinctive.
No.
But you have, like this one, you've got the Skegs that are extremely prominent. And this one that you drew, I know it pained you, Len, but look at that skull cap.
I know.
Beautiful vinyl top on there.
If you had to have a skull cap, I said that's probably the most acceptable version. And if you could talk the buyer into making the cap the same color as the car, that was even better.
Now, so you got half of what you wanted.
Got half of what I wanted. Yes, you're right.
And you saved some money because you didn't have to finish.
You didn't have to put the whole
the seam there either. You didn't have to metal finish the seam with a quarter.
Oh, and you saved some vinyl.
You saved some vinyl. Probably charge the customer the same amount.
Oh, of course.
Olds always had these beautiful wheels too.
Didn't they? That particular wheel design, it was not a cast wheel. It was a stamped wheel with a rim. You probably know the order number for that wheel. It became almost synonymous with Oldsmobile. It was not an expensive wheel because it was basically a stamped wheel with a snap-on rim, and they looked good. And we kept it for years.
It's almost like Olds had that wheel was their wheel. Pontiac had the Rally.
Yes, they did. Yep.
And the honeycomb.
The honeycomb is the one I think of most. Yeah.
Which I think was also a plastic kind of...
I don't remember whether that was, but yeah, you could be right.
It was never... I remember Bill Porter saying that the honeycomb, he wanted it to be the wheel.
And it was, yeah.
But they ended up using a standard steel wheel.
Underneath it.
And it just drove him, I think, absolutely bananas.
That would drive Bill crazy, but it looked good.
It looked good.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. But what was some of the thought as you were going through, let's say, trying to take this car and the subsequent one, just morphing this and the Skags into, like you were saying, into what ended up being, which doesn't really have it, but at the same time, it's got that rear fender for them. Yep. It's just too much on the side.
Well, if you look at that car, really, the Skags, we just simply connected them. And it became a feature line down at the bottom of the car.
Oh, okay.
And along with the fender shape on top. So there was still an element there. Still an element.
Now, was this a contentious design? Did design leadership love this? Or what was the reaction of Mitchell and the design leadership?
I think that was a go project from the start. I think once we hit on that fundamental theme, it was an easy ride. It really was. And I remember when we showed those cars in the Dome for the first time, Bill Mitchell and the designers, even the chiefs, we all sat in the back. Mitchell and his assistants would be up front looking at the cars. And when they rolled that car out, I remember the fiberglass model was in silver. I heard a noise coming from up front, and I know it was Bill, and it sounded positive. The next thing I know is her asked me to come down there, and Bill just looked at me and said, "What took you so long, kid?" And that was the end of it. And for Mitchell, that was a positive comment. I felt pretty good after that. And then he said, "Okay, get it off stage. We don't want anybody to see it.
They didn't want anybody to touch it.
You don't touch it. We're done." And that car stayed pretty much like the fiberglass model right up until we started building them.
Wow. Did you try any different grille textures? Was it always this?
That was my reference to the pile of cardboard. John and I tried every vertical, horizontal egg crate. The vertical, we kind of knew right from the start that was the grille that belonged on that particular car, with that up and over, with the waterfall.
I would have loved to see an egg crate up and over.
We had them. We had them. It didn't lend itself to going up and over as gracefully, and you had to work with it. I don't know how you would have really kept a two-dimensional grille vertical and then gone horizontal and gone over the curve. But it just didn't look good. We tried it. We tried everything. We tried it without the divider bar in the center.
Oh, that's the Olds trademark ever since 1958.
Well, the center bar, I'm talking about the one in the grille itself.
Oh, the center bar in the grille. Okay, got it. How did this divider become an Olds? Because that was a Pontiac thing.
It was, you're right.
Did Olds just say we want it too? Or?
Well, I remember some Olds that had the divider bar, but they were much lower. And the grill center was just big enough to put the emblem, some 88s and 98s. The grills weren't that tall, but they were very wide.
Okay.
And the center bar, it was the place to put the emblem. And later on, I think, when we put it up and over the top, it obviously had to become a taller grill. And then I think it just became kind of an Olds trademark.
Huh. So maybe it lent itself to the rocket form.
Well, it did.
Right? Because you have that tall
yes.
Rocket form. So that's interesting. But I always thought that was interesting because Pontiac had the split grill starting in 59 and Olds 68. It just, from that point, it became...
It became ours. It really did, yeah.
Huh. So the road graphics, to your point, the strong road graphics
two big shapes for the grills, up and over, and the same thing with the taillights.
Was there ever any debate on this one of kind of submarining the bars underneath the bumper like they'd done a couple years before?
I don't know that we could have done that then. That would have been a pretty tall grill.
It would have.
I don't know if the bumper rules changed to the point where we wouldn't have been able to do that either.
Okay.
I don't remember. Because that's a solid piece all the way across in the back of the bumper.
That's right. Interesting. Now, you have pretty muted wheel arches here,
Yeah,
too.
we do. Yeah.
It's a far cry from the Tornado days where you had that
oh my God,
tremendous
yes.
wheel arch. So old styling had evolved since then.
Yeah, I don't think with the shape on the top that would have been as appropriate as a more muted wheel flare shape on the car.
Now, you also have the coupe, the Cutlass S and 442 coupe, which you did a rendering of with this awesome front end here that kind of is up and back.
I love that front. Yeah.
Yeah. This is more radical, really,
I think
than even
of the two cars, even though the up and over grill was fairly new, I think that front with the profile and the grill going, I think that was the fresher of the two. I like them both, but that was more radical.
Was that just to give it some dynamic motion?
They wanted, I think general manager wanted the car to be a little sportier and not so much elegant as sporty. And a lot of the 442s were built off that body style, more so than I think the Supreme.
Correct. I mean, this one to me is a really handsome.
I agree.
Front end. I love the waterfall, but I actually think I like this one a little bit
I'm with you.
So.
Yeah. In fact, the gentleman that was the editor for the Journey with Olds magazine, he had that car. That's the car I rendered for him, and it was a beautiful car.
Now, Len did some great work on that particular Cutlass, and we talked about it really propelling the sales, and we've seen some of Len's artwork. Now, one thing that Len did was another piece of artwork here that this is the real gem, right?
Yes.
The Monza Starfire that, for the viewer, this is clearly what this car looked like, right, Len? I mean,
oh, yeah.
This is an example of what designers do.
This is what designers think of and dream of. That is as cheated as you can get without becoming a cartoon.
You've got a little more dash to axle there, right?
Yeah,
and
a little bit more, a little lower.
A little lower.
I'm trying to remember who I did that sketch for, too. Because he even commented, he said, boy, that looks a lot better than my car. And I said, well, we worked on it a little bit, yeah. Bigger wheels, faster windshield, lower, longer. I wish the car looked like that.
I think we all do, but it's just, it shows you when you have it like the designers, they you don't always adhere to the package proportions, right? And then maybe the subsequent Cutlass that came after your famous one, the the Aero back Cutlass was one of those.
It could have been. It could have been. That was one of those cars that we should have gotten off the train when we had time to get off. And I think we loved the car initially so much because it was an entirely different car. Number one, it was a hatchback. Number two, it was lower. And we lost the hatch. We lost the fact that the profile got a lot taller. And we could see the car was going south. And there might have been a time when we could have at least changed the design enough that it would have suited the architecture better than that did. And as I mentioned earlier, Tom Semple did this sketch, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And we all fell in love with it.
It's like your Starfire sketch.
Yeah, better than that, yeah. But that was really the thing that kept propelling us forward. We kept thinking, well, we'll get it to look like that. But that train left the station. There was no way we could do it. And I look back at it now, and I think that's one point in my career when I wish I could go back and change things. Unfortunately, nobody ever gave us that chance. And I think we mentioned it earlier. The sedan was actually a better adaptation of that would-have-been hatchback than the coupe was. And then, that's strange. Coupes make hatchbacks more. They make them more acceptable than a sedan. But in that case, the sedan, I think, was probably a better-looking car than the hatch that wasn't.
For those who don't know, I mean, designers are sketching these, and then you get the package, and then the wheelbase might be different, the width might be different, the height might be different, and then you've kind of got to adapt the car, right?
Absolutely.
To all those packages. And I'll put for the viewer a picture of a Tom Semple sketch, because I know what you're talking about. He had like these, I don't know what you want to call them, like blobby watercolor background.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Like psychedelic kind of. And then the car is emerging from this.
Yes.
I mean, he just fantastic
He did beautiful renderings, no question about it. And that fooled us all. But when we were doing it on a better architecture, when the car was lower and when it was a hatch, it was a better looking car than where we ended up. There's no question about that.
Well, you certainly had a number of home runs through your career, and I think the Cutlass that we talked about, that 76-7 still remains timeless.
Yes, it does.
I mean, and of all of the Cutlasses, frankly, of all the Cutlasses that were produced, it was the best-selling.
It was the best-selling, and there were some good-looking Cutlass that preceded it, too. But I think that one just hit the mark.
Did anybody, when you were at GM Design, were the other studios jealous of the success, do you think? Or did they poke at you at all?
I think we had way too much pride in each of our studios to let that show. And we weren't the only ones that did a good-looking car off that body, too. We just happened to hit it at the right time.
And for those who don't know, Len, I think you'd agree, you were blessed with some great talent in your studio.
No question about it. No question about it. We went through the list of people that have been in the studio, and there's a lot of great names that were in GM Design staff that went through Oldsmobile. I had one of the best staffs. There's no question about it. I wouldn't have traded, and as I said earlier, unless somebody was destined for promotion, I'm not gonna make him stay in Oldsmobile if he's got something coming down the road that's going to make his life better. So, but I tried to hold on as many people as I could.
And you had Dennis Burke, who later became chief designer of
Yes.
the Aurora, the 95
Yep.
Aurora. You had John Manugian, who became a chief designer
Yep.
of Cadillac and Pontiac, and did the 97 Grand Prix and the second-gen CTS
Yep.
coupe, sedan, and wagon. You had Tom Semple,
That's simple.
who followed Jerry Hirschberg, right?
He went out with Jerry to Nissan. Yeah.
So you had and then modelers.
Oh, Andy Hansel.
Andy Hansel.
The list goes on and on. Eric Clow. I can't list all the names of the people, but I mean, we had the best. We really did, and they worked well together too. That's the other thing. It was a team, and I'm not saying we're the only studio that had that. The teams had a esprit de corps back then that you don't quite get when you move people around. Today you might be working on an Oldsmobile. Well, you won't be anymore, but you could have been working on an Oldsmobile, and today you might be working on a different car entirely. We were family, and we felt that way in the studio, and I think all the studios felt that way. And we don't have studios like that anymore. We just have big rooms where you do the car of the day. And I guess that works, but I wouldn't trade the kind of relationships we had in our studios between the guys, and I'm talking the designers, the modelers, and the engineers. They were family. We had locks on the doors back then too. And if you were in Oldsmobile, if you didn't know what the combination, you weren't getting in.
That's funny. I always joke with another person I've interviewed, Wayne Cady, who he threw a few people out of Cadillac studio. I just joked.
Oh, yes. They didn't belong in there.
I joked, I think Dave Rand, another person we've had on the program, I think Wayne threw him out. I just joked with Wayne now. I said, you probably would have thrown me out of your studio. And he said, no, I was probably sucking up to the finance guy.
Oh, yeah. Right.
But no, this was really helpful, and I'm glad we could at least give the viewers some insight into your baby.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's actually fair to say the most successful Oldsmobile ever produced.
Absolutely.
So that's a pretty, you should have that. Len Casillo, design chief of most successful Oldsmobile
There you go.
or something, right?
Yeah.
But Len, this was really a pleasure.
Well, it was fun. It's reminiscing for me, and any time I have an opportunity to do that, I'll do it.
Well, when the weather gets good, I'll bring some of my Oldsmobiles.
There you go. I got to see them.
You can talk about the car live then, and the
Right.
skeg lines. And
Oh,
everything.
yes. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Wow.
No, this is fun. And it's kind of what we do when we have our luncheons with our group that you've joined a couple times, too.
I'm thankful to have joined, and I learn something every time, and
we
it's
love,
history.
We love to reminisce and go back, and it's because we loved it so much back then. We really had a good time. It was fun.
It shows in the car.
Absolutely fun. Yeah, maybe it does. Maybe it does.
It shows in the product.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Len.